Chad Littlefield here, co-founder of We and Me Inc. And I'm here at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University to speak to a bunch of future rocket scientists, computer engineers, etc. as a part of our Retention Through Relationships program. The Retention Through Relationships program is this combination of coming in and working in person with student leaders and staff to equip the skills of creating connections, skipping the small talk, building relationships of trust to create ultimately conversations that really matter, that inspire people to stay and pursue whatever it is that they're after and not leave because of feeling isolated at any point.
In a room full of this many really brilliant people, when we meet somebody for the very first time, we tend to ask one of 4 or 5 questions, which is crazy. And so part of the experiment that I would love to dive into today is like, what if we didn't? What if you didn't find out where somebody is from and you had a conversation with them? What if you didn't start with that small talk? How many of you really love obligatory small talk? Like you're just like chatting about the weather kind of because you need to fill space. Out of curiosity. A couple of people. So take that. So you saw that number of hands. I'm curious for you, how many of you really enjoy conversations that like keep you up late at night with a roommate or somebody where you like really get to dive into something? Yeah, okay, so, and I think that right now as a piece of context setting, I think right now we're living in this world and this culture that's filled with sips of connection. It's really easy to get cheap sips of connection, but it's a little bit more effort to get a gulp. Those big conversations, a little bit fewer and farther between. In the last week, how many of you have had more than 3 conversations that you would categorize as small talk in any context? Look around. That means in the last week alone, almost all of us were standing across from another human being, having some obligatory small chat that was like, I don't know if this is really like working. And the other person was feeling, I don't know if this is really working. And then we parted ways and did it 2 more times. And so I think that if we can crack that, because what I'm not suggesting is that you just like go in real intense and like, what is life teaching you right now? Right? That's not a suggestion that I have for you. And so part of our experiment today is how do you find that happy medium blend between creating conversations that matter, skipping the small talk, but not asking for people's social security number? On the center of your tables, you've got a card that looks like this. It's probably a lot smaller. And in a minute, what we're gonna do is a little experiment. So I'm gonna stop talking and we're gonna do this question swapping experiment that's gonna see what happens when we meet each other and we don't ask, what do you do, where are you from?
The cards allowed us to have a different context to be able to talk to different people with. Besides having the meaningless conversation, it allowed us to really get deep into something quickly without having to really come up with a question ourselves.
As human beings, we tend to focus on ourselves when we talk rather than focusing on the other person. So I feel like that's one of the main things I learned is to take a step back during conversation and think about what we're talking about and what's happening in the moment rather than think about the future and what am I going to respond with.
In general, the culture especially is created through our speaking and our listening. And if you break down conversations into little Lego pieces, they're made up of questions and answers. And so when you change the questions, you change the conversations, and when you change the conversations, you start to shift culture.
If someone broke down that wall, that was more likely for you to share something more important, I guess.
At the end of it all, we ended up having like a really meaningful conversation. And instead of just being like, oh, thanks for that conversation, I felt like a stronger connection, and we actually left that conversation both gaining something, just a little piece of knowledge of each other that helps us better relate and just appreciate each other as a person more.
When you look at career competencies of students that are going out into the world for jobs, the top 10 things that organizations are requesting, more than half of them have nothing to do with a technical experience or ability. They have to do with things like leadership and communication and all the soft skills that are really hard to learn that nobody ever is taught. And one of the things that comes back is that the program and this retention through relationships that we've put together, the combination of training and interactive keynote and big group and small group, hits on all of those competencies and dynamics. And so it's not just a moment in this room, but it actually helps students advance their own careers, aims, and that is really what it's about. It's about making a difference in the lives of these students and helping them make a difference in the lives of the people that they serve.